Greetings to you all. In the endless flow of time, each of us walks our own journey, from the pure days of childhood to the vibrant years of youth, and gradually stepping into the quiet turns of life. People often say that the age of maturity is a memorable milestone, but is it merely a number, a label printed on an identity card, or is it an internal state where intellect, character, and emotions converge after years of collisions, heartbreak, and recovery? Perhaps maturity does not lie in graying hair or a few wrinkles around the eyes. It is not the moment we cross 40 or blow out the candles on our 50th birthday. It is the moment when our soul is no longer swayed by praise or criticism, when we begin to see life with empathy and live each day as a gift rather than a race. Just like fruit needs enough sunlight, wind, and rain to become sweet, humans need time, experiences, and even pain to truly ripen in character. And that ripeness makes no sound. It quietly spreads through how we live, how we think, and how we treat ourselves and others. The concept of maturity in this sense belongs not to biology but to the soul. It is a state not bound to age. Some people at 30 are already profound enough to be respected. Some people at 60 are still as impulsive as 20. Because maturity has never been the result of time, but the result of awakening. And as the book, Many Lives, Many Times Once, suggested, each soul through countless lifetimes has only one goal: to learn, to experience, and to evolve. So the age of ripeness in a human life is that beautiful turning point, when a soul begins to truly awaken, no longer panicking over loss, no longer confused by turbulence, but calm enough to sit back and ask what we have gone through and what still truly matters. Maturity is when you no longer feel the need to prove yourself, when you no longer need to be right to be acknowledged. It is when you learn to listen deeply, not to refute but to understand. And also when you can bow to a flower instead of looking up at the universe to find sparkle. A mature person does not need applause because they already shine from within. They do not live out of obligation but out of desire. They choose to live kindly, not because they fear karma, but because they understand that kindness is a form of intelligence. And like the law of cause and effect, like a frequency of vibration, as Many Lives many times emphasized, those who are truly mature always emit a gentle energy that embraces others with calm and care, not with reasoning or preaching. So what truly creates maturity in a person? Is it the failures that made us want to collapse? The losses that cut deep into the heart? Or is it the quiet afternoons when we sat alone amidst endless questions about the meaning of life? The answer probably lies in all of those things. Blending together and settling into a different kind of awareness. Like old wine in a clay jar, it does not need style or promotion, only enough time and patience to release its fragrance. Dear friends, the journey to maturity is a journey with no map. Each person has their own path, their own way of learning, their own kind of fall, and their own rhythm of awakening. No one is the same. But if you look closely, you will notice subtle signs that we are entering the season of ripeness in our lives. In the next part, we will explore those signs more deeply, not to judge who is immature or mature, but to reflect on ourselves to see whether our hearts have received enough sun and wind to be sweet. And if not, it is okay. We still have time to grow with a gentle, peaceful, and compassionate attitude toward ourselves. The quiet signs of maturity. There are changes in life that are not loud, not announced with fanfare, not marked by opening ceremonies or ribbon cuttings. They quietly unfold little by little, like dew soaking into the soil, like sunlight seeping into a young fruit. And then one day we suddenly realize we are no longer the same. Maturity, if it can be named, is just like that. No one marks a specific day for us, and there is no grand ceremony to acknowledge it. But from within, we know clearly that it is when we no longer feel excited by arguments or victories, when we choose silence instead of reaction, when instead of getting angry, we feel compassion, when hearing others boast instead of envy or contempt, we smile and think, everyone needs to be recognized in their own way. When witnessing someone lose their temper, instead of responding, we quietly step back, not out of weakness, but because we clearly see that fire began in a wounded heart. A mature person knows that not everyone who shouts is strong, and not everyone who is silent is submissive. There is a kind of silence that comes from inner peace, a core strong enough to no longer need to push out any dissatisfaction. And sometimes it is the exhaustion from the endless cycle of desires, calculations, and ambitions that becomes the bell awakening, a quiet process of growth. No longer feeling the need to prove anything, no longer fearing being misunderstood, no longer being driven by others' judgment. That is not indifference or resignation, but the sign of a new phase, where we begin to live more for the inner self, for true peace, not just appearances. And strangely enough, the moment we stop trying to be a good person in the eyes of others, we naturally become kind. Kind not because we fear judgment, but because our hearts feel lighter living that way. Another sign of maturity is when we begin to tend to our inner field more carefully. Like a farmer who understands the seasons, a mature person does not let every seed fall into their soil. They know what to keep and what to let go. They know how to say no to toxic conversations, how to step away when they feel negative energy approaching. They no longer take pride in being able to endure everything, but begin to learn how to protect themselves kindly. They choose to live simply not because they lack the means, but because they accept that peace does not come from many things, but from a few things that are enough. Enough for the spirit, for the heart, and for the inner life. A mature person also starts observing themselves more than judging others. They no longer care who is bad or good, but spend time reflecting on themselves. Am I better today than I was yesterday? What did I learn from the last fall? Did I say anything that hurt someone? Did I do anything just to satisfy my ego? They no longer hunt for others' faults to prove themselves right, but quietly clean up the small pieces within, like a gardener pruning dry leaves, pulling weeds, fertilizing the soil with patience. And then a mature person learns the most important thing: to love themselves the right way. No longer a kind of indulgent self-love, but a compassionate and understanding one. Knowing how to listen to the body, not forcing it to overwork. Knowing how to say no when something does not feel right. Knowing how to stop when chasing something unnecessary. Knowing how to forgive past mistakes and how to say to themselves, "It is okay, we will start over." Because in the end, when we know how to love ourselves not with narcissism but with respect, we can also love others in a healthy way. Dear friends, maturity does not come with a birthday, and it does not come after one failure. It comes from years of living, stumbling, quietly observing and adjusting, like a craftsman shaping every curve of a ceramic piece. And if you see even a small part of those signs in yourself, smile, because you might be heading in the right direction. In part 3, we will continue this journey to delve deeper into the territory we call mature inner self. There are seasons to harvest, gardens that need healing, and simple things that make a human life precious. There are harvests that don't take place in fields. There are crops not measured by grains, but by the peace when closing your eyes, by the serenity when thinking of yourself and others. A person who has reached ripeness no longer craves to possess more for satisfaction, but begins to focus on what they can let go of. They once chased success, fame, praise, and status, as if those were mountaintops to conquer. But at some point, they realize the highest peak is not out there, but within their own mind. Reaching that point, you no longer need to prove anything. They begin returning inward, not through theory, but through real experience. Through afternoons sitting on the porch, watching leaves fall and feeling old sorrows shedding from their heart. Through early mornings waking up without restlessness, simply wishing the day to pass peacefully. One of the first sweet fruits of ripeness is when you stop scrutinizing others' lives. Instead of judging, you learn to observe. Instead of asking why someone is the way they are, you ask what you can learn from the situation. That is a sign of a soul beginning to absorb wisdom, no longer using others' pain as gossip material, no longer rushing to conclusions from one action, one meeting, or one incomplete sentence. You understand that everyone has a hidden side. Everyone carries wounds they can't put into words. And when you're compassionate enough to not force others to rationalize their pain to fit your standards, that's when you've truly stepped into a new level of consciousness. A ripened person also begins to love differently, no longer loving, because of fiery emotions, sweet words, or ideal dreams, but with a calm, steadfast affection. They know that a compatible person is not one who always brings joy, but one who helps them grow. And sometimes that growth comes from pain, conflict, and challenges, rather than comfort. They understand that to love is to see the other as they truly are, not coloring them with imagination. To walk together, not to hold hands forever, but to evolve together, to learn the lessons that need learning. And they know clearly that if peace must be traded to maintain a relationship, it is no longer love but dependence. A ripened person also begins to cherish small things more. A real home-cooked meal, an old friend who still remembers your birthday, a sudden laugh with a loved one, a quiet moment while reading a beautiful poem. Instead of chasing grand pleasures, they learn to harvest happiness from the smallest things, because they know that life is not one big event but a series of moments. And each moment can become paradise if we are mindful enough to fully be in it. At the ripened age, people begin to understand more clearly the laws of life, that nothing lasts forever, not even suffering, that everything comes and goes, that what is meant to arrive will arrive, even if you hide, and what is meant to leave can't be held on to. Understanding this, they learn to live lighter, without forcing, without straining, without competing to prove themselves, without comparing to self-inflict wounds. They learn to breathe as if each breath is a privilege. They learn to be silent, as if that very silence is healing each vessel in their body and mind. They no longer ask what they get, but ask how they have lived. No longer how many people remember them, but how many people they have been kind to. No longer needing a crowd to feel alive, but being deep and genuine enough with themselves to not feel lonely. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a beautiful paradox in maturity. The deeper you go into your essence, the simpler everything becomes. Not because life gets less complicated, but because your mind is no longer too complicated in facing it. Ripeness, therefore, is not only a desirable state, but a proud result of a real journey filled with falls, awakenings, and the courage to change. In the upcoming Part 4, we will continue exploring what contributes to ripeness in a person. Is it experience, loss, learning, or fateful encounters in life? Part 4. The catalysts of ripeness. No one is born mature, and there is no pre-drawn map that leads someone straight to depth. Everyone needs a process forged by experience, sculpted by pain, opened by learning, and sometimes awakened by unexpected meetings. The ripeness of character is like a well-aged wine requiring enough time, enough trials, enough stillness, and most importantly, enough courage not to quit halfway. So what helps someone go from impulsive to composed, from reckless to insightful, from hurried to mindful? 1. Lived experiences. The silent but great teacher. Not every lesson lies in books. Some come from a severe illness, a breakup, a complete loss, a shock you thought you couldn't survive. But those very upheavals open another door in your soul. No one teaches you how to accept a loved one's death, but going through it teaches you to cherish life. No one teaches you how to forgive someone who hurt you. But when pain lasts long enough, you learn. Forgiveness is healing yourself, not the other person. Experience, especially the scratched and bruised kind, is the moist soil that nourishes the seed of ripeness. Not because you want it, but because there's no other way than to grow up. 2. Loss, sometimes the doorway into the inner self. Some people only truly ripen after losing someone dear. Some begin to empathize after losing themselves. And some only learn how to live mindfully after facing death. Loss, in a way, is a ruthless but wise hand pulling you out of illusions, forcing you to see life with different eyes. From there, you learn to appreciate the present, to say loving words, while there's still time to let go of anger because life is not long enough to cling to meaningless things. Those who have suffered deep losses often radiate a very special energy, not fading, not sad, but a comforting silence. They don't speak much, but a nod or a hand squeeze from them can make others feel understood. 3. Learning the quiet. Guiding light. A ripened person never stops learning, not to show off, but to enlighten. They understand that the more they know, the smaller they feel. They don't learn to win arguments. They learn to understand, to accept, to view things, not in black and white but in shades of compassion. Top of form, they read books but are not swayed by empty theories. They choose what can reflect into their own lives. They learn from life, from a child, a beggar, an ordinary person they happen to meet on a bus. Because in their eyes, every person is an open book. And most importantly, they learn from their own mistakes without self-blame or denial. Sometimes a person appears in your life like a parenthesis and then disappears. But it is they, with a few seemingly casual words, who change your entire way of living. The matured person always knows to appreciate such encounters, even if brief. They believe that some people are sent into their lives not to stay, but to remind them of something profound. A friend who once betrayed you teaches you resilience. A teacher who once scolded you helps you correct your mistakes. A lover who once left you teaches you self-love. Each person, whether they come to you with smiles or tears, contributes to shaping the being you are today. Stillness, the final soil in which fruits ripen. Ultimately, no true ripening happens if you have never entered stillness. Stillness is not the absence of sound, but the absence of inner chaos. It is when you sit down without caring about what must be done, what must be proven, or what must be regained, and simply breathe and listen to the echo from deep within. It is in those moments when the mind no longer chases worries that awareness begins to arise. Awareness of life, of oneself, of right and wrong, and of what must be let go in order to move forward. Maturity does not come from a single collision. It comes from many small, gentle, persistent impacts like bones soaking into soil, like sunlight coaxing sprouts out of darkness. And once matured, a person may not change on the outside, but their entire vibrational frequency shifts. They don't need to explain. They don't need to speak much. Just their presence alone can soothe others. The final part will be a profound conclusion, where we reflect on the journey of maturity as a gift bestowed by time, experience, and awakening. Maturity, the quiet gift of time. There is something strange that only after a long journey through life, people begin to realize that true maturity is never loud. It has no graduation ceremony, no certificates, and no one stands to applaud you. It arrives gently one afternoon, when you sit alone, no longer needing to prove anything and still feel at peace. Ripening is a gift, but it is not a gift everyone receives. Not because it's rare, but because not everyone has the patience to walk the whole journey. That journey is full of unanswered questions, full of doubts, regrets, and moments of heartbreaking loneliness. But miraculously, if you keep walking, never turning back, never complaining, then at some point on that road you begin to notice a very strange light. The light of self-understanding. One day you will stop being angry with those who hurt you, not because they were right, but because you no longer need those wounds to define yourself. You no longer seek revenge or want to teach them a lesson, because you understand that everyone is grappling with their own shadows. And forgiveness, sometimes, is the greatest kindness you can give yourself. One day you will stop chasing others' standards. You no longer care whether you must be as successful as someone else, beautiful, rich, talented, or outstanding. You learn to love yourself even when you are still clumsy, still figuring things out. And that self-love unexpectedly makes you more attractive than ever because it is something the world is lacking. One day you will learn to live slowly without feeling like you're wasting time. You are no longer in a rush just to finish something. You begin to notice a blooming flower, a bird's chirp in the morning, a warm cup of tea at 5 p.m., and when you slow your breath and look deeper, you will see that life has always been magical. It's just that we've been in too much of a hurry and missed it. You will realize that to be alive is already a great blessing. One day you will no longer try to change others. You will know that everyone has their own timeline. You don't need to pull anyone out of the darkness if they are not ready. You just need to keep your own light warm enough so that when they're ready, they know where to return. One day, you will feel like you have nothing, and yet have everything. Not because you have money or power, but because you have peace. You may lose your house, your job, the things you once thought meant everything, and still not lose yourself. You understand that everything is temporary. Only the inner steadfastness is eternal, and you no longer wish for life to be easy. You just hope to be light enough not to be knocked down when life is hard. Maturity is when you begin to live from within, when you don't need others to see you in order to feel valuable. When you live like a tree that does not boast its flowers, does not cry out loud, but has deep roots and a wide canopy. You don't need to be perfect. Maturity does not mean never making mistakes, but knowing how to get back up faster after each fall. Knowing how to learn the lesson, to smile and say thank you even to what once brought you pain. And then you understand everyone is on their own ripening journey. No one is faster or slower than anyone else. Each person just has their own season to bear fruit. If you are going through days of confusion, struggle, and heartbreak, please don't rush. Everything you are experiencing is the nourishment for an upcoming season of ripening. Every crack lets the light in. Every wound is a doorway through which understanding and compassion can bloom. Be gentle with yourself. And if you have ripened, become a cooling branch of a tree. No need to preach, just be present. Because the presence of someone who has walked through storms is always a gentle refuge for those who are lost. If you feel this video brings value and meaning, please help us by liking and sharing it so more people can listen. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to always be updated when a new video is posted. Wishing you and your family peace, happiness, and overflowing joy. Thank you for taking the time to watch. See you again in the next videos.